Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
The most important thing that you can do is take out miles in total. So how do you make sure that you're landing where your distribution centers and where you're bringing freight into the ports with the best ability to max out? If you're going to run a mile, how do you max out what you're running so that you don't have to run unnecessary miles, whether it's empty or not fully cubing and scaling out the trailer?
Welcome to the eCom Logistics Podcast. Our special guest today is Erin Van Zeeland, Senior Vice President and GM of Logistics and Chief Commercial Officer at Schneider. Erin started her career at Schneider 2 days after graduating from Penn State University and has had an amazing journey that we're excited to learn about. In her current role, she is accountable for the strategy, execution, growth, profitability of Schneider's fastest growing segment, including brokerage, supply chain, and distribution management, and the power-only service offerings. Additionally, a little over a year ago, Erin became Chief Commercial Officer, where she's responsible for the commercial strategy, including marketing, sales, Salesforce effectiveness, product development, and service that drives business growth and expanded market share. Erin was the recent recipient of Supply and Demand Chain Executive's first ever Women in Supply Chain Award. She serves on the board of directors for the United Way in Green Bay, and she also co-leads the Schneider's Women's Network and various other women in leadership and business program. Erin, that was a very impressive resume and bio. We are so thankful that you're joining us today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you both today.
Yeah. Have you asked your board or your CEO, maybe, are there more responsibilities they would like to give you at this point? Yes.
I'm sure they're going to find some more.
Thank you. You know what? Before we even get into intro, I just have this one question. Yeah. Why is Green Bay such a hub for transportation? What's going on? Because, in the past I used to work for another company, Genco, and their offices for transportation was out there. Why is that?
Well, when you think about the center of the country, and this is where most of the paper manufacturers really started, next to this beautiful Fox River that goes right through Green Bay. And we were able to, in this market, be able to take those products and move them beyond the bounds of Wisconsin. And so we consider this the mega of transportation and logistics capability and talent. And all around this area, there are people that have roots in Schneider that have expanded that in different areas and capabilities. So we have lots of friends in this area.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, Erin, something we don't see every day is, someone like yourself who's spent 30 years with the same company, certainly extremely impressive, and would love to for you to share with us your journey within Schneider. Very curious, obviously, as I stated in the intro, 2 days after graduating from Penn State, you start your career at Schneider. So I always like to ask, did you have a passion for logistics, or, as we say, did logistics find you? So if you could just share a little bit about your journey over the past 30 years and maybe a little bit about the solutions that you help lead at Schneider, that'd be a great way to start.
Sure. I was heading to Hershey right out of Penn State. I was in operations management, production line engineering, and labor industrial relations. So I always thought I was going to work in a factory and really look at how you increase throughput and production for much more in a manufacturing or that kind of operation. And Schneider came on site at Penn State and they pulled a bunch of resumes out of the hub. And we went to an information session the night before the interviews. And for me, it was interview practice. So I actually never applied to Schneider. And in 30 years, I never applied for any one role at Schneider. So Schneider kept finding me and finding an opportunity for me to grow and or use my skills in different areas. And I think that has been just a blessing for so many of us. That's how we have careers that look like 20, 25, 30 years here, because we recognize a big part of our accountability is to find talent, nurture that, help them discover their skills and capabilities, and then broaden them. But when I came to Schneider, I was leading drivers, and I was out at the Harrisburg terminal, and I had a board, we used to call it, of 40 drivers. Some of them were in dedicated operations up and down the East Coast, and some of them were one-way network. The guys that would go into New York City every day and make those deliveries that the rest of the workforce didn't want to do. I had that driver group on my board, and I was completely enjoying learning transportation from that business orientation and from the drivers. We would go out on the road for a week at a time every year with our driver business leaders so that they could experience transportation from the driver's vantage point. And to be completely honest, Dan, I could still be doing that role today. I really enjoyed it. You know, it's connecting 40 drivers with their families, with their business, and how do we create mutual benefit. And I really enjoyed it until my leader tapped me on the shoulder and said, we think you could lead this center or this terminal one day. And since you're coming right out of college, we'd like you to understand more about what we do at Schneider in total. So I was supposed to go to Green Bay for more of a sales operations integration manager, doing a lot of training with new service team leaders and building processes between our centralized customer service and our decentralized operations. And I met my husband probably within 2 months of being here. And he is a local, grew up here, lots and lots of Van Zeeland. So I inherited the Dutch name. and I just wasn't going back to Harrisburg after that. So I really enjoyed that operations side. But from that role, I got to eventually be the terminal manager here in Green Bay. So didn't have to do it in Harrisburg. I could do it here. I got the opportunity to lead some of our largest commercial customers as we were looking to grow and expand their business with Schneider. So I went from operations to sales. I led our business transformation efforts. So when we were going to take out every one of our systems and redesign end-to-end processes, I worked for our CIO for that period of time, Judy Lemke, and I was accountable for our business transformation and our change management, enterprise change management competency. And so I really enjoyed that tenure, and I got to lead in HR. I got to lead in brokerage, second go round in brokerage. Mark Rourke, who's our current CEO, was waiting for me when I came back to work after baby number 2. And he said, hey, Erin, we're going to build a brokerage company. You want to come along with? And I said, well, are we going to acquire it? Or are we going to build it? He's like, I'm not sure. You want to be my chief of staff? I said, do I need to ask somebody? And he said, no, we're waiting for you. Are you ready? I'm like, I'm ready. So that's how it started. I got to see the organization from lots of different areas. And I have been really leading logistics for the last 8 years. And I kind of came back to my roots of working with companies of all different sizes and helping solution what they were trying to do across our full capability. And so I'm back with the chief commercial officer role.
I was just, while you were talking, I was looking at like the years that you were in each of these roles. Mm-hmm. And this is a pattern that we have observed, right? Like leaders truly come from where they have experience in all of these various aspects of the business, right? And human resources, I mean, you wouldn't expect someone, with your background running a depot or doing transformation activities, reporting to a CIO, and then managing human resources as a division. I think that definitely plays into, becoming a good leader. So kudos to you. Yeah. No questions about that.
And one of the things that was really cool about that experience with human resources is we really took all of that change management methodology and how do you design the work and then how do you design the people processes for the work. That really put, I'd say, HR front and center around how we were going to deliver operations. And so our HR organization is a powerful force in how we do things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And, as I mentioned in your bio, you're very involved in a bunch of programs related to, women in leadership, business programs associated with that. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about Schneider's Women's Network, because I think, it's super important. Listen, I have 3 daughters, right? So I'm still trying to see if one of them will follow in the logistics footsteps. But so far, I don't think I'm being I don't think it's going to happen that way. Kind of ahead of the curve 30 years ago and seeing something in you. And obviously you shined, obviously, in everything that you did. But would love to hear how that focus is going today and what type of success you're having and where you're looking to focus those efforts.
Yeah. So we have had the business resource group, Schneider Women's Network. We just celebrated last year our 15th anniversary of that group. And really what we wanted to make sure that we were doing is that across our enterprise, we're pulling together women leaders, future women leaders, and we're giving them an opportunity to work together, mentor, be in this area of development, listening to others, going through books together, and just kind of thinking about how do we stretch the container. And there's a common term, the imposter syndrome. It's been on lots of different forums as it relates to women in leadership positions. But a lot of what we have found is how do we help our women leaders see what they're really capable of and not kind of hold themselves back, especially as they're going through their career and raising a family and all the other responsibilities that we tend to have. And so really breaking down some of those pieces so we could learn from each other and really be much more confident so that we have more people that are ready for that next role. We will always hire the best person, but we want the full gamut of people that we are preparing for it to feel really confident around their capabilities to be successful in that role. And gosh, we have hundreds of people in the Schneider Women's Network, and we work with some of our customers' women's networks as well so that we can continue to raise the bar and bring more capability so that we can make women leader, diverse leadership capabilities really leading our organization. It's right now 40% of all leaders at Schneider are women. And we love that, just continually getting more people to the table and contributing to our strategy.
That's wow. And one of the other statistics that I saw was 14% of the drivers today are women as well in Schneider. Is that accurate as a number?
Yeah, I think we just hit at the end of last year, I think we just hit 12%, which was a really big deal because it used to be closer to 8%. We've done a lot of work. If you think about how things have changed in our industry, it used to be a very long haul kind of operation where you could be over the road for 2 weeks at a time and not have predictability around when you were going to get back. But the more that customers have gotten to a regionalization and we've grown our intermodal, there's a lot of more local dray kinds of opportunities as well as dedicated, where we can create much more stability around the time at home experience. And that has really opened up doors for folks that maybe couldn't consider this as a career And we have lots of women driver advocates that speak to other people in our organization and in the industry around why would you want to be choosing this as a career and what can it allow you to achieve? And it's been really exciting to hear from them.
Imagine.
And just curious, is that 12% Schneider percentage? And how does that kind of benchmark against the industry? Is that a pretty high?
It's very high on the long haul trucking side. I believe if you were looking more at the small pack operations and or the LTL trucking operations where there is much more predictability, it would be higher. But in our industry, that is a very high number. And we believe we're just getting started.
Love it. Love it. Want to jump now, Erin, to sustainability. And, obviously we talk a lot about it. I mean, there's probably not too many podcast episodes we've recorded where we haven't addressed it. And we're excited that we're addressing it because it's actually meaningful, right? And companies are being, benchmarked and they have metrics and they have goals and initiatives that are meaningful today. So wanted just to learn from you what Schneider's approach is to sustainability in its logistics operation and what steps you're taking for yourself and for your customers and your customers' customers maybe to reduce that carbon footprint.
Yeah, thanks for that question. From a sustainability standpoint, it is all of our jobs to make a difference in really the world and the impact that we're having. Schneider is an industry leader here. So from the very beginnings of understanding what is our carbon footprint and what are the options that we can do in order to have less carbon emissions has been a big part of what we've been doing for well over a decade because it's good for business as well to be more efficient on your tractors and and less fuel consumption, all of those types of areas. But when you run a trucking company, an intermodal operation, and a logistics services capability, we find the ability to get stronger in every one of those areas. So we have the largest battery electric fleet now in long haul trucking, based all in Southern Cal for intermodal dray. So for customers, by the end of the year, we will have 92 trucks, and those are all Freightliner eCascadia trucks that we have worked for years with the OEM in designing and engineering what that spec needs to be so that you could get the kind of range that you would want to get, how you think about charging, really the work even with the power grid and the utilities companies and all the work that's required so that we can start that operation. But there's a lot of excitement about it. A lot of customers want to match what their obligations and commitments are to their customers and to their stakeholders to really the industry leadership position that Schneider's taking. So on the trucking side, it's more around aerodynamic trucks. Fuel considerations. What is the kind of fuel? How green is the fuel that you're putting in the trucks? Keeping the trucks new and really working even in the kind of the aerodynamic pieces of it. So even if you think about the mirrors that traditionally would have been on Class 8 trucks so that you could see what's going on behind you. Now we use very specialized mirrors that are actually cameras that are round. Safety first and always is our first core value, but we can see what's around us in the motoring public, but that mirror is much more aerodynamic. So you don't have that kind of drag that's created as well. So we constantly are working through with the OEMs and the vendors to just make our trucks more fuel efficient. And then any place that we can help a customer convert their freight from over the road to the rail, we are all for it because that is an easy way to be able to reduce the carbon emissions. And so both our rail partnerships and expanding those and making sure that we help escort our customers to utilize that greener option is really important overall. And then if you go to the area of logistics, we can help customers look at their full supply chain. And the most important thing that you can do is take out miles in total. So how do you make sure that you're landing where your distribution centers and where you're bringing freight into the ports with the best ability to max out? If you're going to run a mile, how do you max out what you're running so that you don't have to run unnecessary miles, whether it's empty or not fully cubing and scaling out the trailer? And so we help with that full design. We help them see where are all the opportunities that they could do in order to get to a greener position, and then build that roadmap with them so we can help them influence it and drive them in a greener position.
Absolutely. And one other area that, maybe I just don't hear about it a lot, but technically anyone that runs a depot or has a warehouse operation, you're talking about massive roofs.
Yeah.
What's the position on solar, right? Yours or industry, what are you seeing on that front from a unit economic standpoint? It seems like EV trucking has the unit economics.
Yes. Yes.
Right. What about solar? Do you feel the same way?
We are big on solar in terms of the facilities and really getting to a net neutral on all the facilities that we operate. And we have a building that's right behind me here. It's called The Grove. It's our innovation center. And so how do we make sure that we're utilizing solar technology? We're utilizing all the next grade capabilities so that we can bring down that overall carbon footprint associated with the four walls. And so whether that's one of our DCs, our terminals, or even our office buildings, we're deeply committed to that. And so are shippers. That's usually an easy place to start, especially if they're a retailer in terms of what they can do with that big roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Making sure that they get the benefit from it. But it's going to take a whole lot of things in order to get to the kinds of commitments that we're all going to need to get to.
Absolutely. Recently I heard Target has the highest amount of roofs out of any company in the United States.
I didn't know that.
Interesting.
The amount of square footage of roof, it's Target. It's not Walmart, actually. That surprises me, but well, that's a good news. And I think Target's taken a pretty serious approach at that as well. So
they have.
Yeah.
It's really fun in terms of working with our customers. Our customers definitely recognize the value of green beyond just doing what's right. They will have, let's say, laundry detergent on the shelf right next to each other, one that's green, one that's not green. It will be priced differentially. And they are seeing more and more of us as consumers going for the green option, the better option for the environment. And so it's good for business. People want to feel good about what they're buying and spending money on, and they can prove it down to the details of their operation. So they're investing more there.
But exactly the point that you just made, right? The chances are the production cost of a green product today versus a not green product is no longer that much different, right? Like we aren't paying that much more.
Yeah.
It's extremely close. It's just a matter of just bringing it to parity. And then the question becomes, why do I need the non-green product even on the shelf going forward, right?
Exactly.
And I think the same thing's happening with the industry as we speak right now. You are seeing it evolve into, it was, 10 years ago, if you wanted to put solar panels on your roof, it was extremely expensive. Yes. The payback period was 15, 20, 25 years on the amount of, I just had my roof assessed. And the payback period, even right now, sits at about 12 years.
Yes.
Right? For the amount of electricity. But again, I live up north. I don't have enough,
3 months of sun will do that to the ROI.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think it's starting to become where it's extremely affordable. I come, back home in India because the sun shines out there all the time. Yeah. The payback period is literally less than 1 year.
Yes.
And you are starting to see this type of, where it's starting to become affordable.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to those days where it's no longer an option.
Yes.
The de facto is going to be green.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that the battery electric vehicles are in California. They don't perform as well in the colder climates.
Exactly.
And, so it's an important piece in terms of the infrastructure and the investments in the infrastructure, but also it is the warmer climates that is able to get the better benefit, at least right now. But absolutely, in some cases, it's a lot more cost to be green. So your example around the laundry detergent, it's about 3 times the cost for a battery electric truck than a diesel truck. So it is a significant difference in expense, and it's new technology. So really, how does it perform over time, and how do you think about some of those items? That's why we are deeply engaged with our engineering capacity with the OEMs to make sure that it gets honed in, because it can't have that differential long term. We got to get it into the space that it makes sense.
Exactly. But also on the flip side, the depreciation is not like the internal combustion engines, right, anymore. They look different. The only thing that, and again, it's expensive right now, the batteries, but usually the battery lives are 6, 7, 8 years or something of that nature. Hopefully within that time frame, the cost of battery comes down.
Yes.
And I think the next war will be fought over lithium at this point. So
the cost and the weight. We need the cost and the weight to come down.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Maybe just switching gears a little bit, but keeping within the trucking driver space. I remember during the pandemic, anywhere you looked, there was driver shortage, right? Like driver shortage, it was being all drummed up, and the amount of people that we needed, there was shortage of all sorts of people without a question. It seems like we are going towards normalization at this point. How is that impacting the workforce? Like, did you have to hire a lot and now you are retaining all of that? Like, how does the workforce get impacted? Just trying to, educate myself on that subject.
Absolutely. So the last 2 years, so since the coming out of the early stages of the pandemic, when the supply chain was just absolutely crazy, it's well communicated in terms of not having enough capacity when there was that kind of demand and that kind of volatility. So this is supply and demand. Rates went up. They went up significantly. And so people decided to come into this industry and or stay in the industry longer. So you look at that kind of acceleration on rates, and there is excess capacity today for the amount of demand that there is, just looking at the macro side of demand. And that's because there were a lot of people that came into the industry when the rates were at that period of time. However, whether it's a large carrier or whether it's a one truck fleet, those costs of operating that they came in at, or that we would invest more in driver capacity when the market was stronger, those economics have changed. And so now being in a position to make my truck payment as a single carrier, single truck fleet, it's becoming much, much more difficult. The costs that they paid to get in from a truck standpoint, and when you look at all the other pieces of their operating and fuel and all of those expenses, it's a very thin margin business. And this period of time that we are in will take out carrier capacity. And so we need to make sure that we're making the right long-term decisions as companies and as carriers for what is a more normal condition, but we're certainly not in it right now.
Interestingly, last week, I came back from a trip and the Uber driver from airport to home was a truck driver, right? Like, so I just started talking about like the industry and whatnot with him. And he explained the dynamics that are going on in the market from his vantage point. And he said, listen, where it used to be $2.50 a mile, right, for a load, now some people are willing to pick it up at $1.
Yeah.
Just because they need the truck rolling.
Yes.
And out of that, 70 cents ends up going to the truck driver. Yeah. Again, these are Canadian dollars, so I don't know if it's comparable in the US side. I'd never heard of these numbers before, but that's extremely surprising. And out of that 30 cents for that owner operator, they need to pay for the insurance, the maintenance, the running of the operations of the business, etc. I mean, yeah, it seems pretty stressful. Yeah. And I guess that's coming out of the capacity or overcapacity challenge.
Yeah. If you think about it this way, the OOIDA is a group of owner operators, and they just produced a report probably a couple of weeks ago. And they were looking at when a owner operator, single truck operation is looking at all of their expenses and covering insurance and everything that they have to get through. In 2021, the average take-home pay of an owner-operator would have been around $83,000. 2022, that dropped down to $63,000. And that's after all of the work that they do to be in this industry. And that was when the revenue point that they would earn on, to your Uber driver example, that was in 2022 versus where it has been for at least the last several months is much lower than those pieces. So how long would a single owner operator want to be in this space when the take-home pay is less than $63,000? Yeah. Especially because the labor market's so hot too. There's lots of roles that are available that you can sleep in your bed every night and have much more predictable earnings. So it is a very difficult time right now looking at how that has changed over recently.
That is, interesting, but I guess the market dynamics are going to play out. And I think the other market dynamics, maybe if you want to, get into it a little bit, is we spoke about EVs, but there is a lot of movement, and I think it's more currently restricted. Autonomous is more regional or long haul, right? Like either local deliveries, like we are seeing those small form factor trucks. We just had recently Volta Trucks CEO and discussing the capabilities they have on the podcast. And then there is the long haul capabilities that are starting to show up out in the market. How do you envision this industry kind of reshaping as it comes to like autonomous coming in play? And I know you kind of threw a few numbers yesterday when we were doing the prep call, but would really love to get your vantage point on it.
Yeah, we're really excited about what we've been seeing on that front, and we have been engaged. There's many different players that could win here, right? And so we're engaged with many of them, but we believe that there is a terrific application for the autonomous truck. And it's funny, I think the joke is, how do you know it's an autonomous truck that's going down the road? Well, there's at least two drivers in it. That's how you know in terms of what that looks like. And thinking about the calibration and really understanding the learning models that need to be there and how you identify what's going on around you. But I do believe the application will be more on the highways, the infrastructure associated with long haul, probably West Coast, South, and those long stretches. And we believe it would be the investments in infrastructure in order to make that work. It's a lot like the movement to intermodal, except you don't need to be connected to track. You can use the nation's highways as long as that's well set set up and established for the driver community, it's a win because they get to stay more regional and more local in their operations. And so the value prop to the driver is so much better as well when they have that predictability. It's almost hub and spoke LTL like in nature as it continues to go forward. But there's a lot of things that need to get figured out in this space. In the area of safety, liability, people just feel the natural US based person feels more comfortable with a driver in the truck than with a machine handling that. And if something goes wrong, really, was that a design in the way that it was set up, or are people tend to be a little bit more forgiving when it's human? And so there's a lot of work that's taking place on that front, both in terms of how it's supported infrastructure and then insurance wise and some of the rest.
Yeah. And I guess regulations as well, right? Yeah. But as far as regulatory concerns, like, have we been able to cross that bridge on that side where you can actually take people out, right? Like right now, there's 2 people in the truck.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go to 0? Is the regulations available to be able to do that?
Yeah. But we have a TransPac. A lot of transportation and logistics companies are doing a lot of work to influence those that are in the legislature and different roles that get to make an impact here, to just educate them on what really is best for the industry and what's best for the, call it, price of Cheerios on the shelf. And we all want to make sure that these are very safe roads. And that is our first concern. But how do we make sure that we are moving the business forward versus creating a scenario where there's even potentially more liability associated with some of those actions? And so we are deeply invested there in DC.
Yeah. Something you just touched on was, it's good that the drivers get to stay closer to home, right? Has there been disruption in that space at all from a tech standpoint with like machine learning capabilities, artificial intelligence why is relay as a service not a big thing where, the drivers are swapping regionally? So you are almost always getting to go back home, even on a long haul.
Yeah, that is happening more and more. As you can build together those networks of predictability so that you can basically do the handoff in both going your directions. That's a really important piece of the driver value proposition, as well as how we can efficiently get freight to the marketplace. So we do a lot of that within our operations, and continually trying to determine, can we create better windows at the shipper consignee location so we have a little bit more flexibility in some of those areas. And we work alongside with our customers around what that would create as benefit for them and what it can create as benefit for us and for our drivers. So really building those networks together, considering the relay opportunity.
Amazing.
That is amazing. Erin, was about 13 months ago, you took on the role of Chief Commercial Officer. Mm-hmm. And, I've been in the space for a little over 20 years. When I owned a 3PL, and 3PL meaning fulfillment distribution company, I know Schneider was always, a couple of our clients had, long-term contracts with Schneider. And that meant that the rep from my area, I was in Pittsburgh at the time, would always stop in, and, it was very relationship driven, very engaged, bringing the team lunch and donuts and everything. So, and a lot of companies operated that way. And I'm just curious, as and again, I know you've only been in the role for a little over a year, but are you seeing any trends to how your clients or potential clients are looking to interact with Schneider or any type of organization in the transportation or logistics space? Is it becoming more automated, more I want to kind of click and book, or are you still seeing, and again, I know the pandemic probably changed things a lot because we lost a lot of that, that connection of being face to face, but just would love your perspective on how commercial engagements are going today and how you kind of maybe see that playing out over the next year or so.
Yeah, Dan, I'd say it's a yes and. So relationships are still incredibly important in this industry. And the kind of work that we do with customers has changed as you have AI automation, kind of API connections with customers. There's a lot less rub or rigor between the way that our systems work together and communicate information. We now have direct lines of communication to many shippers right into their TMS or WMS, so that we don't need that much friction as that was needed to be a person making a phone call and making that piece. And that really wasn't a relationship. That is just the way that you needed to be able to get things done. So everybody has a lot of hats to wear. And what customers want is effortless. They really want it to be predictive, transparent, really clear around that their customer delivery is going to happen and that it's for a good value. And so we make sure that we give total transparency to that picture. But the work that we do is much more strategic and thoughtful around where are we going next? How do we get after driving down your total landed cost? How do we increase your total picture of service and reliability? And how do we really build the strategy over time around what we want to get done together? So it allowed us to have much more meaningful discussions, much more strategic and planful to really improve the business overall versus the transactional effort work that was required. So it's kind of an assistant. It allows that communication to happen directly where they want it, when they want it. And then if the customer doesn't have that technology on their side, they can come directly into our platform and they could work and exist 100% in our platform to execute all of their freight. And they could be running intermodal, over the road, LTL. We could consolidate their freight. We can give them all that visibility, all their documents. They could be in a completely self-serve capability. And they could also say, I do want to talk to my rep, or I do want to talk to somebody on Sunday at 3 a.m. to get some help. And we make sure it really is omni-channel in the way that we want to know that customer and work with them all the ways that it is efficient for them.
I love that. I love that. And I think
that is fantastic. Yeah,
it really is. And one of the practices that we run outside of our hobby as being podcast hosts is running the selection process for 3PLs. And what is really interesting and I absolutely love it is the fact that people are finally getting away from the commoditization of logistics, and it's more about wanting strategic partnership, wanting someone who's going to be proactive and helping a company, advance throughout the next several years, and account management and everything you just said, visibility, seamless interaction. And price is always going to be important, but it now feels like, because there's been so much pain with organizations treating it like a commodity, that we're now not looking to shave, the 10th of a penny or a penny, right? It's if you could bring that value and that strategic relationship and partnership to the relationship, it becomes a 1 + 1 = 3 equation, which we're seeing a lot more. I think it took having pain to get to that point, but I really do love that. That's where we see it going.
So Dan, one of my favorite things to do is we have these customer advisory meetings or customer engagement meetings, and it will be on a different subject that's important to our customer. And we had one here in November. When you live right next to the Packers, you tend to bring customers up to the And in that forum, we were talking about really engineering customer supply chains and really helping them determine what their path forward is. And it was amazing because it was our customers getting up on stage and talking with a large group of other customers or prospects around the differences that we made together. And not just in an academic vision of this is what you could do or get done, but really being there for every step of the way and making sure that's delivered. And then what's the next thing? And it definitely is a personal relationship, and it's a connected and aligned objectives so that we are ensuring their success all the way through the process. And so it was just so much fun. We're about to do another one in Nashville next week, but it is customers hearing from other companies that are going through like items and how do we help them move from point A to point B and what works and what doesn't work. They're very transparent in that discussion and no one's scripted. And it just advances the ball forward for our shippers and hearing from others.
I love that.
That's awesome.
That really is awesome. Erin, we're getting really close to the end and it's been just an amazing conversation. But as someone who, again, 2 days after graduating from Penn State University, found her life career and her profession with a single company, I wanted I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if you had any advice for people coming out of graduating soon or thinking about exploring a career in logistics, transportation, distribution, any aspect of logistics, any advice you have for people that might be exploring it or looking to get into it?
Yeah, I think this industry, I have 2 college kids. So one is graduating in May and I have one that's a sophomore and they're going through this whole discovery process around what do they want to do and how do they want to contribute. I don't know if I have anybody in logistics either, Dan. So, but I do have a data scientist coming up.
Oh,
so
there you go. All right. Love that.
There you go.
To this space. But this is such a dynamic and vital industry. And we get to work with the best companies in the world and really help them solve what it is that they're trying to do to make a difference in their customers' day. You know, we think about we're improving the lives of people everywhere. And how do we do that? And that is really working with some of the best companies and really helping them see the art of the possible together and building partnerships in that way. And so I think whether it's the people side, the data side, engineering, the whole solving problems, I've been here 30 years and no 2 days look the same. That's pretty incredible. And we get to work with really talented people, our carriers, suppliers, customers. And I think it's a very roll up your sleeves kind of industry. And let's be focused on learning and growing together. And it has been absolutely the right decision for me, for both of you. And it is dynamic, exciting, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
And maybe a final question from me, and that's got to be Green Bay Packers. Do you own multi-generational seasons ticket? Because almost anyone that I meet from Green Bay supposedly has like these family tickets that get passed on for generations. Is this a thing you own?
Well, we have a little piece of stock that says we're a shareholder in the Packers. I don't know if that's worth anything other than the frame that it's been. Our CEO is on the board now of the Packers, but my husband's grandmother has tickets that rotate among our family, but we have been on the list for a very long time and we do not have season tickets. But as somebody in Brown County, there's lottery tickets that you usually can get through that process as well. But no, we wait for our game and we take great advantage of being part of this incredible city that gets to support this team.
You guys are one proud community as far as I've come to know people from Green Bay. So yes,
absolutely.
Kudos to you.
Oh, Erin, this has been just an amazing conversation. Want to give you the opportunity before I even go there, I want to say you got the cool factor going from me when I was doing a little research on you. I saw some TikToks that you posted. So related to Schneider and logistics and everything that I thought was really cool. And, that's not a place I've gone yet. So wanted to give you the opportunity to share with everyone where they could follow you, maybe on whether that's LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, wherever it might be, and wherever they could go to learn more about Schneider and their distribution logistics services.
Yes, clearly Schneider.com is a great place, has a lot of resources around what problem are you trying to solve and potentially how we can help and just get some education on the industry. But I'd love if you followed me. I'm out on LinkedIn and on TikTok and on every other forum you can imagine. And so is Schneider. We want to make sure that our message is around wherever people are and look to get informed around opportunities to move forward, whether it's jobs or whether it's creative solutions. So we're easy to find. We're the big orange trucks out on the road. And the most important information that you need to know is that color is Omaha orange. And it is the color that the human eye can see from the furthest away. So you don't have a shot of not finding us.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Erin. Well, thank you once again. Really appreciate the time.
Yes, thank you. This was an absolute joy for me too. And I really appreciate the work that you do and really bringing some of this vantage point to many of us. So I thank you both.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ. And I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference in logistics together.